Hello, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of the Top Cut Yu-Gi-Oh podcast. I am Sunny, and of course, I am here with my co-host. What's up, dude?
Yo, what's up, peoples?
Of course, we have Caleb. Before we get too far in, let's go ahead and give a huge shout out to all of our patrons. So, a huge thank you to Austin Johnson, Kane Martin, Cyber, Mocha, Myth Oceana, Scuzz Daddy, Spencer Kennedy, AD, Aaron Gardner, Anthony Leela, Damian Zink, Dino DNA, Mountain Man, Owen Alvarado, Pig, Jeremy Drysdale, Ray Powell, and Sunny Sweet. Thank you all so much for your new and continued support of the podcast. We've got multiple patrons just in the last week alone, and wow, thank you so much. We really appreciate the support. Um,
Woo!
we have some new cards to read off here, and we are going to do something a little bit different today. We actually have a list of some Yu-Gi-Oh slang terms, and we know that we have a lot of newer players uh, in our listener base. It's something we reference a lot because it's true, and we happen to know it. So, um, we want to take a moment to talk about some things that may not be quite as intuitive as a lot of other things about the game are, and just generally take some time to how do I put it, explain some things that maybe people haven't really explained before. So
Oh yeah,
um
no, it's one of those things where we just been kind of saying these terms, expecting everyone to just kind of know what they mean, and then someone brought up in Discord that we should probably explain some of this because there's a couple things that we've said in the podcast that they didn't understand. So
yeah,
this kind of
absolutely.
helped that. As a matter of fact, looking up some of these, I even learned a couple of new ones.
Yeah, there's definitely some things within the there's like what is it, a wiki page for Yu-Gi-Oh
Yep,
slang terms.
yep, over on
And
Wikipedia.
huh?
Yeah, it's over on Wikipedia. The link will be in the link to the webpage that we're getting all these slang terms from, minus one or two of them, is going to be in the description below.
Yeah. So, for those wondering about maybe some audio quality things, we do want to say that we are recording remote today. There's been some issues with, I guess you could say, sickness or whatever, running around, and we just don't want to take any chances with anything. So,
Oh yeah,
we don't believe that it's COVID or anything like that, but we do want to take the time to acknowledge that. So,
oh yeah, no, no. We know for a fact that the Backstreet Boys have not decided to have their reunion tour here. Uh, with either of our houses at the moment. Something else entirely. Don't want to get into it.
yeah, pretty much. So,
All right.
um,
So first card we got. Ooh. Okay, so the first. Do you mind if I go ahead and take this first card? Because this is kind of some DM support that I've been that I kind of think is really neat.
yeah, go for it.
Okay, so the card in Japan is called Barbarian Ogao. Translated to English, it'd be Barbarian number zero. The TCG translation would be Battleguard number zero. It's Battleguard support. So Battleguards were this pair of cards that Joey had. They're level 5 warriors, and it was Swamp Battleguard and Lava Battleguard. When Swamp Battleguard's on the field, all your Lava Battleguards got an attack buff. And if Lava Battleguard's on the field, all your Battleguards also got an attack buff. So, and then much later, they gave them a spell card and a boss monster called Battleguard King. So this is Battleguard Zero. It's a level 1 Earth Warrior effect monster, 50 attack, 100 defense. It can only use the 1 and 3 effects of this card's name, each once per turn. Hard once per turn. We'll explain that later. If this card is normal or special summon, you can add 1 Feast of the Wild level 5 from your deck to your hand. 2. Battleguard monster you control gain 500 attack, including itself. So it's actually like 550 attack. 3. You can tribute this card to special summon a level 8 warrior monster from your hand. That is for Battleguard King. Uh, Feast of the Wild level 5 is a spell card, old spell card. Special summon up to 2 level 5 warrior type monsters from your hand and or graveyard, but their effects are negated. Then for the rest of the turn, they cannot attack.
I didn't even know they had a boss monster. So
Yeah, they do now. I believe it was added in Arc V. I remember like one of the earliest big bad evil guys for that show having it as his boss monster. So yeah.
cool, cool.
Um, I mean, it doesn't like make battle guards good or anything, but it's neat. It's cool. Still win on Battleguard Shaman and like all the other battle guards that are anime only right now.
Hey, one piece at a time.
Fair enough. But like even if they gave like all the battle guard, even if they released all the battle guards, then they'd still be terrible.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. It's cool though.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to find the name of the user in our Discord server that suggested we talk about some. Um,
Yeah, the slang.
yeah, I wanted to give a shout out. So, I can't find the message in the Discord server, but you know who you are. Shout out to you.
Yes,
So,
thank you. Thank you for bringing this to our attention that we've been saying things people don't understand what we mean.
yep.
Let's see. Since I got the last card, you can get the next card.
Alrighty. Next card we have. So we did get some new weather support. So this is for the archetype for the weather painters, which was a pretty cool older archetype. And so this new support will come out in Dimension Force. This is called the Weather Forecast. It is a field spell card. You can only activate one card with this card's name per turn. You can only use this card's name's second and third effects once per turn each. 1. When this card resolves, you can place the weather spell or trap directly from your deck to your spell and trap zone face up. 2. You can only treat face up the weather cards in your spell and trap zones as the weather monsters, or you can also treat face up the weather cards in your spell and trap zones as the weather monsters and use them for the link summon of a the weather link monster. 3. During your main phase, you can immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon one the weather monster. This is a pretty cool card. It acts as a good extender for the deck. It gives them an extra normal summon, which is important. And also, it lets you place one of their spell traps from your spell and trap zone, or from the deck to their spell and trap zone. So you can place it like you can place like a trap face up, similar to how Kowloon for the virtual world deck places Chuche face up.
Oh yeah, but not only that, the second effect is also super cool. Letting you use the weather spell and traps as materials for link monsters.
Well, for Link Monster specifically, the Weather Link Monster, which
Yeah,
is
which I
the next card we talk about.
oh yeah, absolutely. Since I will get that one. So the current English translation for this is the Weather Painter Night Rainbow. TCG player, not TCG player. YGO organization also believes that it could also be translated to the Weather Painter Moonbow. Link 3 Dark Fairy. You don't see many Dark Fairies. That's cool. Let's see. 2400 attack. The link arrows are all pointing down. Bottom left, bottom, and bottom right. One materials. 3 the weather monsters. 1 if this card is link summoned, you can special summon one of your banished the weather monsters. Cool. 2 the weather effect monsters this card points to gain the following effect. Quick effect. You can banish this card and target one monster opponent controls. Banish it until the standby of your next turn. 3. If this link summon card is destroyed, you can special summon a the Weather Painter Rainbow from your extra deck. This is super cool.
Oh yeah, this card's amazing for the deck.
Because first off, on link summon, you get back one of your banished weather monsters. Now, here's the cool part. If you make this, use its interrupt effect, and then make a new one using it as one of the materials, you get back one of your monster that you banished.
Um, yeah, there's nothing on this that's once per turn either.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. It's all soft once per turns.
Nope. What are you talking about? It's not even soft once per turn. It's just not once per turn.
Well, okay, so with the link summon effect, you have to link summon it. So that's soft once per turn. It's once per link summon of this card. If you link summon it again, you get the effect again. And then
No, it's not once. It doesn't say once. Okay. See. Okay. Oh boy.
it's one of
Wha-
those weird things where it is once per summon, only because it activates on link summon.
But it's not once per turn or once per summon. It doesn't say once per turn anywhere on the card.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, like none of its effects say at all say once per turn, and they let you and if it's destroyed for any reason, you could pop it yourself to get this off. You just get to cheat out a the Weather Painter Rainbow, who I should have pulled up.
Yeah. So just while you're pulling that up, I mean, this card, it, I mean, it does everything that the deck needed, you know. And by the way, can I just say, I love the artwork on these cards.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know if any of the Weather Painter cards are good, but I do like the artwork.
oh yeah. Let's see, the Weather Painter Rainbow, 3 weather monsters. It is a oh, excuse me, Light Fairy, 2400 attack. When your opponent would special summon a monster, quick effect. That's not good. You can send this link summon card to the graveyard, negate the summon, and destroy the monster. It's a summon negate, but only if you link summon it. So you don't get that effect if you cheat it out with Moonbow. Once per turn, during the standby of the turn, after this card was banished from the field to activate the weather card effect, you can special summon this banished card. So if you use it as the banish cost, it just recurs itself.
Yeah.
The weather effect monsters that this card points to gain the following effect: when a card or effect is activated, quick effect, banish this card, negate, and destroy. So it cheats out an Omni negate.
I mean, that's pretty good, to be honest.
Oh my god, that's amazing. Oh,
The
that's
only thing I
great.
have to wonder is, does the deck have any inherent in-engine ways to destroy its own stuff?
I don't
Which I
know.
just don't know.
Neither do I. It's really cool though, and I hope that everyone out there who's super into the weather monsters love this card.
Yeah, I saw some awesome reactions online from some people like MBT and stuff like that that were, I mean, just loving these cards. So,
Okay, that's good. That's good.
next we have a new card from also from Dimension Force called Divine Dragon. Hold on, I'm looking at this. Titanomachia. Titanomachia. That's it.
There,
Titanomachia.
there you go, Titanomachia.
All right. This is a level 10 light dragon effect monster, 3000 attack, 2000 defense. You can only use this card's name second and third effects once per turn each. 1. This special summon card cannot be destroyed by battle. Okay. 2. You can banish 3 Divine Dragon Titanomachia from your graveyard and or among monsters from your face-up field, including this face-up card. Destroy all cards your opponent controls. 3. During the end phase, you can send cards from the top of your deck to the graveyard equal to the number of dragon monsters you control. Hmm. Interesting.
Interesting. Um, it's not.
Yeah, but it doesn't have a way to cheat itself out. You have to either tribute to summon it, or I guess you can like in engine in like a Dragon Link deck
Like,
turbo it
yeah,
out. I
like
mean,
Red MD or LP if you mill one from if you like Foolish Burial it, I guess.
yeah, that would be all I could come up
Or
with.
not LP, Pisty.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, you'd have to send it to the graveyard and then either LP or Pisty it out. So,
Yeah,
or
or
no, not definitely not LP. You'd have to Pisty it
yeah,
out.
Pisty or Red MD.
Right. Yeah.
Which is Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, by the way, for those of you who did not know, and I've said Red MD a bunch.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes,
So,
I call him the Red Doctor because it's a joke.
right. I do want to take a quick moment before we get into our main segment to, of course, thank our sponsor, ETB Games in Alexandria, Louisiana. ETB Games is, of course, a one stop shop to get all of your nerdy needs. You can, of course, get anything you need for Yu Gi Oh!, Magic the Gathering, Yu Gi Oh!, or Pokemon, D&D, any tabletop game, different books, literature. You can get your fix for tournaments for all of these competitive card games. They also do Digimon. I think if you ask around, you might even find a Dragon Ball Z community or Dragon Ball Z Super, I think is what it's called. But it's definitely a great place to check out, get all of your accessories, get all of your needs, and generally anything that you would need. So thank you to ETB Games for sponsoring the podcast, and check them out in the link at the description down below.
Alrighty then.
And I also want to take a quick moment. Now is as good a time as any. Um, so we had a bit of a, I'm not going to say a contest so much as a um how do you describe it? We had
Uh,
a competition, I guess you could say. So we told our Discord and our Twitter to everybody that has a Spotify Wrapped. So Spotify sends you a not gonna say a notification, but Spotify sends you a thing where you can click on it and see what your most listened to podcasts for the year. Where um, you can see everything that you need to about what you listen to on Spotify this year.
oh yeah, yeah. So we asked people to kind of, show us it on Twitter and Discord, and we got some of them in.
Yep. So the cool thing about the Spotify Wrapped is that it tells you exactly how many minutes you listened to our podcast this year. And if we're in your Spotify top 5, I think, you can just like click on it, it'll tell you how many minutes you listened. So in our Discord, the people that showed us in their Spotify Wrapped were Board Breaker YGO, Owen, Wolf Red MX5, Savior, Sotile, Beatrice Pass, Hello There, Razor Guardian, Cade, Red Eye Chef, Darth Circa, DZZZ Gogo, Cisco RS, XYX Green Day XYX, Board 781 3021. And on Twitter, we had American Outlaw Zero, Power, Shimbo, Millennium Magician, Noah, aka VW, because bees become bad, Top Tier YGO, and Michael. So thank you all so much for your willingness to go ahead and share that with us. It's really cool to see how much people listen throughout the year. But we said that there would be a prize going out to whoever had the most minutes listened on the year. So a huge shout out to Shimbo from Twitter. You will be receiving a one of a kind, well, one of four, there's only four of them, t-shirt that we made. We had an early mock-up made of a t-shirt for the podcast. I'm going to be honest with you, it's not the nicest in the world. It was just kind of an example or a mock-up that we had made. That we only made one for myself, one for Caleb, and one for our other third behind-the-scenes shadowy figure, our partner that works with us on the podcast. And we made one extra one. And the one extra one, I wasn't quite sure what it was for, but I realized that this is it. This is what it's for. So you get a shirt. There's only four of them in existence. There will not be any more made unless you message us and tell us that you need a size that's not in the one that we have. Then there will be five. But thank you. So be sure to message us through Twitter, and we will be sure to send out your awesome shirt as soon as possible. So I want to take a minute and thank everybody for that.
Woo!
So we want to go ahead and get into the slang that we wanted to talk about on today's episode. So we have a list here. It's on the Wikipedia. There's a lot here. So there's some that we all know and love, and then there's some that we just have never heard of. So we want to take a moment to explain these to not only ourselves, but to also our listeners. And if there's any here that require, in our opinion, a little bit more in-depth discussion, we will go ahead and provide that as needed.
Oh yeah. We also came up with three that weren't on this list because they're technically not slang. It's just one is slang. The other two are just game mechanics that aren't really discussed very often. So
Yep.
let's start with the ones that aren't on the list. Beginning
Oh
with
man, I was gonna say the opposite. I was gonna say let's keep them in suspense and talk about the ones on the list first.
you know what? Yeah, let's do that.
All right, let's keep everybody in suspense. So these are in alphabetical order of what's in alphabetical order on the Wikipedia.
Yep.
So the first one is absorb/eat. So the Wikipedia defines this as the act of using a monster as an equip card or exceeds material, usually gaining its power. So think of this as
Ran.
when you activate a
Ran.
card or effect and it attaches your opponent's monster to your Xyz monster.
Not even necessarily just exceeds. Relinquish does it. Relinquished anima does it.
That yeah. Great, great, great example.
And Cyber Dragon Infinity can also do it, but he attaches it as succeeding material. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, and then technically, I would also consider. I personally consider Underworld Goddess at the Close of World because she uses one of your opponent's monsters as material to make her.
yeah, I would consider that too. The next we have is ban, the act of forbidding a card from being used. And as a sub note, ban list, the list of forbidden, limited, or semi limited cards. These are pretty self explanatory.
Oh yeah,
Beat Stick, a monster whose main purpose in a deck is to provide a body with high attack to damage the opponent's life points. And then subcategory, a glorified Beat Stick, an effect monster with high attack whose effect is rarely utilized in its deck and thus spends most of its time being a Beat Stick. So something you can think of in this is kind of in older Yu-Gi-Oh, they would summon vanillas as what they would call as beat sticks. So, or
Primal
even
Beetle is
think of
actually Summon Skull back,
yeah,
back in the day because it was one tribute for 2,500 attack points. The whole point was I got a big monster on board. You can't just attack over it. Good luck.
right. Um, a more recent example is I know in 2012 Yu-Gi-Oh, if you look at the Dino Rabbit deck, you had two Sabersaurus at 1900 attack and two Kabazals, or three and three Sabersaurus and three Kabazals at 1700 attack. And really, those were just there as beat sticks. And I mean, they were targets for Rescue Rabbit, obviously. That's their main function. They were the two highest attack point vanilla dinosaur monsters in the game.
Yep, it's
But
why they in particular were chosen.
yeah, that's why they were chosen. But when you really look at it, they were also, you could just normal summon them and start beating. So, I mean, they serve multiple functions.
Oh yeah, no, like at the time, 1900 and 1700 on a normal summon body was nothing to scoff at, especially in a matchup like Dino Rabbit where they sit there and eat away your resources, and then you're left with maybe one or two monsters you can just set a normal summon. They normal summon monster can just attack over it.
Exactly correct. Next, we have board, which is just the field. You have breaking a board, which is the act of removing or neutralizing the threat of a player's field, usually used when that player has multiple effect negations and or various stun cards. So think of board breaking as when your opponent sets up a full Drytron board and you like Dark Ruler and then Kaiju them and stuff like that. You're breaking their board one piece at a time. So establishing a board, which is the act of summoning and using card effects to fill one's own empty field with monsters or spell traps. So that's when you're building your Drytron board, things like that. Or not even that. You could just be establishing a board presence through these, like a combo that ends on like an Appaloosa, right? So, and then you have board wipe, which is the act of removing multiple, usually all cards on the field or the opponent's field in a single turn or less. So, Lightning Storm would be a board wipe. Harpy's Feather Duster is a board wipe. Dark Hole, Raigeki, things like that.
Uh, Black Rose Dragon.
Yeah, that's a great example for sure. Next you have book slash blanket, the act of flipping a monster to face down defense position. I've never heard this called blanketing.
Yeah,
Um,
neither have
I
I.
always heard of like blanketing meaning something different, like blanketing in effect, like effect veiler. But
I
book,
think
I've
blanket.
always heard like book that card as like Book of Moon, flipping it
Yeah.
face down defense.
Wait, no, no, you're thinking of blanking a card when you're. That's just when you're just negating.
Ah, okay, that makes sense too.
Which actually I don't even think is on this list. Huh?
It's not.
Yeah,
Um, so there you go. There's a freebie for you.
yeah.
Next, we have Boost, the act of using an effect that increases attack defense or affects affection capability. So, I mean, Forbidden Lance, the monster gains 800 attack or loses 800 attack.
I actually think a better example would be Forbidden Chalice because it boosts their attack by 400. Another much better example is when access code
Yeah.
gets made, his effect activates, targeting a link monster and then boosting, quote unquote, his own attack.
Well, um, yeah, yeah, pretty much. So,
Yeah, but
um,
basically anything that increases his attack or defense is a boost.
yeah. So the next one is Boss, the most powerful monster of an archetype or deck, either by attack, defense, or effect. So it gives some examples, but you could look at Lightsworn, which has Judgment Dragon. You could look at Dark Lord, which has Grapha. You could look at, I mean, any number of decks that
Primary
have.
Shurag.
Right, exactly. Next, you have Bounce, the act of returning a card from field to hand. Think compulsory evacuation device, or in a more modern sense, you have Ancient Warriors Oath Double Dragon Lords. Just bounces a card back to hand.
Also known as DDL.
Yeah. Um, for Double Dragon Lords, yeah.
Yeah.
Next, you have Blast, Break, or Pop. The act of destroying a card on the field. So, like I pop your back row with an MST, something like that. That would be.
I've only ever heard pop. I've never heard blast or break.
I think those are more Magic terms.
Probably.
Next, you have Brick or Rot, a bad card combination in the hand that results in the player having to make a suboptimal play. So you can think of this. I've never heard Rot, but I've heard Brick a lot. So you can say that the Dragoon engine, you have to run 2 bricks in Red Eyes and Dark Magician, or in the Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer package, you have to run 2 what they call soft bricks in Celestial and Dasher. Now they're called soft bricks because Celestial and Dasher they still have function while in the hand, but you'd rather them be in the deck.
Much rather than be in the deck at all costs.
Right. And um this will have another application, like another there will be another term for this later on. So next you have buff, a positive effect applied on a monster or the act of using it. Um so or it could be like used like when they buff a card's effect, like when they errata it to make it stronger, but that's extremely rare. So
Usually, whenever economy buffs a monster, it's because they made its like it's a old anime or manga only card that's been around the anime or manga for a long time, but then they just kind of like, okay, we're going to print this card finally. Let's give it a better effect than it had in the anime.
yeah, most of the time when you hear somebody say buff in Yu-Gi-Oh, they're referring to like a card or an archetype, and they'll say, "Oh well, wow, this new card for the archetype, like these new Weather Painter cards really buffed the archetype," that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Next is burn, the effect damage and the act of using it. So this would be like when somebody activates sparks and burns you for what 500 damage.
I think it's 200.
Oh, I know Ukazi is 800.
Yeah. I don't
So
entirely remember. I'm used to Sparks being 50 because all the Yu-Gi-Oh like video games, except for the ones that were just straight up simulators like Duel Links Evolution and whatnot, it was 50.
right. Next we have bury, which is placing a card on the bottom of the deck. This is not one that you hear very often, but think of in Tri Brigade, you have Tri Brigade Fairjeet the Baron Blossom. She'll let you draw one card and then place one card on the bottom of the deck. So
Yeah. So in that case, you'd be saying that makes you draw a card and then it buries one.
yep. Next, you have chain blocking, the use of simultaneous effects such that a card will miss its opportunity to be chained to a certain timing. Okay, this one's a bit complicated. We are really going to go in depth a little bit on this one. So,
Oh yeah.
in certain decks, they have ways to make multiple trigger effects or multiple or just like simultaneous effects happen at the same time. So, when you think about something like this, the best way to think about it would be um I'm trying to think. Okay, if I activate my Tri Brigade Revolt and I summon back a Nerval, a Kit, and a Fairjeet, and link them all the way for a Shurag, 4 effects trigger at the exact same time. So
So in the way that would work is so let's say
well, there's a principle called Seagok.
yep, simultaneous effects go on chain.
Exactly. So when you have simultaneous effects that trigger at the same time, you as turn player, as the player whose effects are activating, well, okay, not as turn player. As the player whose effects are activating, you can order these effects happen in any sequence that you want them.
Oh
So,
yeah.
in the previously mentioned Tri Brigade Revolt scenario, I can activate Tri Brigade Revolt, resolve it. On resolution, those 4 effects are going to trigger. So, let's say I want to go Tri Brigade Shurag Chainlink 1, Fairjeet Chainlink 2, Nerval Chainlink 3, and Kit Chainlink 4. Now, the reason I would do this is because with Chit, with
Kit.
Kit, my son's name is Chip, so
Yeah, it's cool.
yeah. With Kit being Chainlink 4, you can order it to where if your opponent has, say, an Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring in their hand, they can only respond to the Kit. So no matter what, unless they have Called by the Grave or something similar,
Yeah.
your Tri-Brigade Nerval is going to resolve. And as such, you can basically do what's called chain blocking to
Because you
make sure that you block your effects to make sure that they resolve.
because a lot of hand traps and other negations have to activate in response to the thing that they're negating. Um,
Right.
of course, a couple of rare exceptions to that rule. Because rather than saying when your opponent activates a card or effect, do this. It'll say like target one card your opponent controls, do this.
So, a great example is in the previous scenario, the Shurag that we have on field. If our opponent has a
Effect veil,
Effect Veiler or Infinite Impermanence,
or even a
who,
crow.
yeah, or even a DD Crow, as long as they have a card that whose activation condition is fulfilled, they can still activate it here. But they have to understand that something like an Ash Blossom, which specifically activates in response to an effect activation, can only be chained and can only be used on the last effect on the chain. So another good example would be if I did that nice little chain link and I ordered it all that way, and my opponent has Cypher Gear Gamma in hand, they can only respond with that Gamma to my Kit. They cannot use that Gamma to stop my Shurag or my Nerval or my Ferjit, thus protecting you from something like those cards, like a Gamma, like an Ash. So this is, in essence, a way to ensure that proper sequencing allows your plays to go off.
Oh yeah. Part of the reason why the chain link number is important is because the chain resolves backwards,
Right.
starting with chain link. So in this case, let's say you activate those four effects, your opponent then activates Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom at chain link 5 would resolve negating the Kit. Kit would resolve negated, and then Nerval Search, Fergie, Draw and Bury, Shurag Banish.
Right. So, um, those chain links are so important, and understanding how chains work and how chains properly resolve is something that I would say to any beginner is critical in any kind of competitive environment or any kind of not just competitive environment, even tabletop with your friends. Understanding how chain links resolve and understanding how chain links work properly can absolutely, without a doubt, be the difference in understanding the game state and understanding how things are going to work and how things need to happen for you to win.
Oh yeah. And again, then it also allows you to kind of take advantage over the fact that you've got two or three effects going off, because you might, in that exact same example, you might not care whether or not your your kit effect resolves or not. You probably don't care at all.
Right.
But that search and then you get to cycle, quote unquote, a card, um, where you draw one, bury one, and then you can also plus that banish. Those are the stuff you want to go off.
Yeah. I think it's really underestimated how important understanding chains and chain links are. I think that if you really understand how chain links work, you can resolve a lot of rulings issues on your own.
Oh yeah.
So, let's go ahead and move on to the next one because there's a lot of these.
Oh yeah.
The next one is Chimera Tech. So, a Chimera Tech has a multiple attacker built in effect. This is taken from Chimera Tech Overdragon, which is like the most well known multiple attacker. So, think about also Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. It can attack each monster your opponent controls once each. Or Cyber Twinning can attack multiple times. I've never heard of something being called a Chimera Tech, but it's on here.
Yeah, hey, it
Uh,
is. Hey, it's probably just some slang that's not very common to use, but has been used enough for it to be noticed.
right. Next is a combo piece, which is an important single card used to make a combo. So these are your Nervals, your Fractals. These are your Sword Soul of Mo Yi, your, you know, the cards that make your combos happen. These are the important cards for your combos.
Yep.
Or it doesn't even have to be, named archetypal cards. You could also consider cards like Deskbot 001. That's a combo piece. So, next is a counter. So this is spell speed 3 or the act of using an effect that would negate. So spell speed 3 is of course a counter spell or trap. Think Solemn Judgment, Solemn Strike, Solemn Warning, things like that. And the effect and using an effect that would negate, think about the
Ash Blossom. Well, actually, no.
no Ash
Oh,
well, Ash Blossom negates the effect but not the activation.
that is true.
So when I think more of cards like Borreload Savage, which negate the activation. But it's important to remember that a counter trap almost always wins.
Oh
So
yeah.
next you have let's see, counter attack. A monster that had been attacked but was not destroyed destroys the attacker after the attack. So think of a card that um I don't know,
Oh, actually,
a set man eater bug. Your opponent
actually,
attacks into it and you pop their monster.
actually, I have an even better. Actually, I have two. I have two even better examples.
Go for it.
uh Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avermax and actually Boral Sword. So Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avermax, whenever it attacks or is attacked by a special summon monster, it gains that monster's attack. That would be a counterattack, is it gaining that attack and then destroying the monster that attacked it.
Yeah, also that. Yeah. And Boral Sword does the same thing.
Yeah.
Next is
Well,
Death
also
Touch. An
close.
effect. Go ahead.
I'll say it's close enough to the same.
Yeah. Death Touch, an effect that destroys a monster during or after an attack. So think Shadal Construct, or El Shadal Construct, rather. El Shadal Construct, when it attacks an opponent's monster that's special summoned or special summoned from the extra deck.
When it battles a special summoned monster.
Yeah. So when El Shadal Construct battles and a special summoned monster, it destroys that monster before damage calculation is applied.
Another great example actually all the way back in Goat was Mystic Swordsman level 2, with face down monsters and what was the Sasuke, Grandmaster Sasuke with a
Ninja Grandmaster Sasuke, right?
thank you, Grandmaster Sasuke.
I think also maybe Exploder Dragon.
Uh yeah, I'd count it. Well, I wouldn't count Exploder Dragon only because it has to be destroyed to get its pop effect off.
Gotcha. Um, next we have Debuff, a negative effect applied to a monster or the act of using it. So here's where Forbidden Lance could come in. Loses 800 attack.
Oh yeah, and then of course the first half of Boral Sword's battle effect, because it cuts their attack points in half, that would be debuffing their attack to buff his attack.
Right. Next, you have Defend the Castle, a strategy that involves summoning a single powerful or versatile monster, usually with one exceptionally strong protection or disruption effects, and keeping it on the field as long as possible. So this could also be called a towers. Um, think of the the Link 6 for Adignister, how it just summons a huge dude and then they want to defend the castle. They just want to protect that one guy.
Yeah.
The deck can do other things, but that's what a lot of people think of when they think of the deck.
Oh yeah, actually another great example of defending the castle is older Tri Brigade builds whenever they were running like Rendezvous to help protect Barrier Statue. The castle they were defending was Barrier Statue, the Stormwinds at the time.
Right. Next we have Ding, which is Ding Girsu, the Orcus of the Evening Star. It's just a slang term for Ding Girsu, just ding, like you ding somebody's door in a parking lot. But don't do that. That'd be bad. Um, Next, you have Disrupt, the continual use of Floodgate and or counter trap cards. Um, I disagree with this definition. I don't think it's just counter trap cards and floodgates that cause disruptions. I think you also have things like negates and things like that on the board,
Oh yeah.
which also cause disruptions. So
Great examples would actually be Double Dragon Lords, Ensound Blue Robin, even DD Crow can be a disruption.
right, absolutely. Next, you have ditch, the act of sending a card from the hand to the graveyard as part of a deck strategy. So think Tri-Brigade Fractal. It ditches itself from the hand, well, hand or field, but mostly the hand, as a way to get things in the graveyard and get the engine rolling. Next, you have dump, the act of getting cards or any number or specification in the graveyard so that those cards would be used later from the graveyard. Think of Tri-Brigade Kit. I know I keep referencing Tri-Brigade a lot, but I played the deck for like the last year or so. And it just so happens that a lot of these definitions fit the deck.
Oh yeah. Actually, another great example of a dump would actually be the attack boost effect on Card Trooper.
No, that's not a dump.
That is true. Uh, Foolish
A
Burial.
dump is like a strategic sending to the graveyard.
Fair enough. Foolish Burial.
Foolish Burial dumps one.
Uh,
Tri-Brigade Kit dumps one. Things
yeah.
like that.
Lyrilusk Bird Call can dump.
Right. So next you have Engine, a number of cards that helps a deck achieve a certain action or helps a player draw a good card. So think of the Tri-Brigade Engine. The Tri-Brigade Engine consists of 3 Fractal, 3 Kit, 3 Nerval, 2 Karas, and 2 Revolt. That is your, and 110 key really, but that is your Tri-Brigade engine. That is the engine that helps the deck run. That is the main focus and main core. Some decks run multiple engines. You run a Tri-Brigade engine alongside a Lyrilusk engine or a Zodiac engine, or you can run a Dragon Link engine, and all the cards that mainly make your deck go are your engine, just like the engine of a car. So
Now, whenever some engines are really, really small, sometimes they're called packages because they're small.
yeah, so
For instance, with the you just said the name of the archetype,
Tri-Brigade,
Zodiac.
Lyrilusk, Zodiac. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Zodiac
yeah,
package. Yeah.
yeah, because it's very, very small engine, but that's all it needs is like what is it, 5, 6 cards at most.
Um, I mean, Zodiac got to the point where it was literally like a 4 card engine in the main deck.
Yeah, there you go. Um, so yeah, so at that point they also call it a package because it can be decked into a lot of different things.
Yeah, think about the upcoming Brave token stuff. It's a Brave token package.
Yeah, so you could still technically call it the Brave Token engine, but people are going to more likely just call it the package instead.
Yeah. Next, you have Evolution, a card that is better than another card while the 2 cards holding a similar design or the act of using one. I literally don't even know what it's referencing, but I know that the next part, which is a retrain, that's kind of like the subset, a specific kind of evolution that is clearly designed to replace the original. So think of Millenniumize, Restrict, or Relinquished Anima being retrains of Thousand Eyes, Restrict, or Relinquished.
Actually, we actually recently talked about something that was an evolution and not that was specifically an evolution, but not a retrain in a Umi and a Legendary Ocean.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
It's Legendary Ocean is just Umi plus.
It is Umi, that is for sure. There actually, if you want to get technical about it, there is no a legendary ocean.
Technically, you are correct. There is only Umi. It has always been Umi. Praise be the Umi.
All hail Umi. Next, you have an extender. Cards that are usually less useful early on, but becomes more desirable after a player made their initial plays. I kind of disagree with this definition. I'm more partial to Hoban's definition. But generally, sort of, yeah. An extender would be a card that lets you push past the capabilities of your like normal cards. So a good example of this would be Tri Brigade Fairjeet the Baron Blossom is a superior extender. It is a low cost, low effort addition to your board that lets you extend into even more plays by giving you the extra special summon. If that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, yeah. To me that makes sense though, but I also already know what, or also already knew what extender meant. Um.
True.
Oh, another great example of an extender um would actually be petting Cessor if you already had her in hand, but we're doing other plays first. Petting Cessor and
Yeah.
yeah, but Medolce petting Cessor is both a starter and an extender.
Yes.
We'll get into starters later, but sometimes a card can be a starter and an extender. Sometimes it's only an extender. Sometimes only starter.
Yep. Um, I do want to take a moment just to read. I actually have Hopen's book in front of me, and there's two different kinds of extenders that he outlines in his book, which is Road of the King. It's a cool book. You should check it out if you haven't already. It is a wonderful resource. Um, so the two extenders that he talks about are called superior extenders and additional extenders. So, a superior extender would be a high impact cards that extend the line of play and require a minimal amount of setup. So, something like Seer, Malbranch of the Burning Abyss would be a superior extender. So, it pairs well with another card like Graph. Some other superior extenders could be like Mermail Abyss Gund, Dragoonity Ducks, or Soul Charge. Then you have things that are called additional extenders, cards that significantly raise the ceiling of the deck at the cost of being subpar draws. So these are things that might they're weaker draws because they require a lot more setup, but they give the deck a lot more power and a lot more versatility. So some cards like this would be Calcab, Malbranch at the Burning Abyss, Performance Trick Clown, Flamevale Guard, or Mermail Abyss Turge. So there, when you say extender, there's a couple of different ways. There's also reactive extender, which is like traps that raise the ceiling of a deck. Something like Reckless Greed or Call of the Haunted. Um, they raise the ceiling of the deck, but only like reactively. So there's a couple of different ways at looking at extenders. So that's why, to summarize it all up into one sentence here just kind of seems disingenuous to me.
Oh yeah, no,
So,
it definitely is.
next you have Flash, which is just spell speed 2. Think of quick play spells, normal traps, continuous traps, things like that.
And monster
Um,
quick effects.
yeah, so I think these would be called instants in Magic, something like that.
Yeah, instants, and then monster, and then creatures with the actual ability called Flash.
Right.
Which means you can summon this creature during your opponent's turn if you have the mana on board.
Yeah, so this is just a Magic term. Next, you have Floater, a monster that can replace itself upon leaving the field. So, I have a hard time thinking of something like, but when they say one card floats into another, similar to how Graph floats into Seer, something like that.
Um, a great this is old card. Sigrafings of Nephthys would constantly refloat herself whenever she was popped.
Yeah, she floated back into herself.
Yeah, she would literally, her effect was that when she's popped and sent to the graveyard during the next standby special summon her, and you also get an effect off. On top of that, same thing with Garunix, high Fire King High Avatar Garunix. My bad. Um,
I knew you were going to get there eventually.
yeah, exactly. Uh, let's see. Oh, Delindrous Dragon can also float himself.
Yeah,
Uh,
so they're also usually they function also as extenders. So
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. No, like yeah, no, because you can because a lot of floaters, you can send them to the graveyard to get as material for something, as materials for something, and then it floats itself right back.
yeah,
It's basically free.
so I'm just gonna move on because we're on a time limit here.
Fair.
Next we have Floodgate. Oh boy, here we go. A card with a continuous effect that restricts one or both players from performing certain actions. So, cards like this would be Anti-Spell Fragrance, Imperial Order, but it's not just trap cards. It could also be spell cards like Dimensional Fissure. It could also be monster cards like the barrier statue of the Stormwinds or any of the barrier statues. It could also be like Vanity's Fiend or Vanity's Ruler. They are continuous effects that restrict certain actions.
They very specifically have to say that it can't happen, not that it negates. If it says negates, it's not a floodgate, it's just a negate.
Right. I'm gonna kind of plow through some of these because we're not even halfway down and we're running low on time.
Yeah. Oh
If
yeah.
that's
No.
okay with you.
And a good chunk of these are kind of self-explanatory.
Yeah. So next we have Fodder, a card that is used solely as a tribute material or for costs. So in goat format, the scapegoat tokens are fodder for metamorphosis or things like that. Next, you have fusion outside of its normal context, also used to refer to polymerization cards. So think of Fright for a fusion, Thunder Dragon fusion, Miracle fusion. It's a fusion card, things like that. Next, you have Garnet, a card that is crucial to a deck strategy, but can become less useful or even useless when drawn into. This is named after Gem Knight Garnet, which was used with like the Brilliant Fusion engine, just because it was like the strongest um, target for it, but not a good card.
Yeah. If you drew it, you couldn't Brilliant Fusion. A great example of that now would actually be Red Eyes Black Dragon, and Dark Magician, and people using the Dragoon package.
Yeah, so another name for a Garnet is a brick, so they work the same. Next, you have generic cards that can be played in most decks without causing any conflict. So, something like this would be Monster Born. You can play it almost anywhere just for free. Something that's a main deck example, and some extra deck examples would be Appaloosa, Access Code Talker, Borreload Savage, things like that. And semi-generic is cards that are less generic, but nonetheless can still find space in many decks. So, like type or attribute specific supports.
Like the entire Sword Soul archetype being just worm generic.
Yeah, really, in a way, because um, or an even better one, Fire Formation 10 key.
Yeah, it's just yeah, it is a Fire Fist card, but it's just any Beast Warrior.
Yep. So, um, next you have hand traps. So these are monsters with effects that can be activated from the hand in response to its opponent play or manually in certain timing. So things like this are Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, Effect Veiler, DD Crow, Droll and Lockbird, Artifact Lancia, Skullmeister, Ghost Bell and Joyous. Wait, is it Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion?
Yeah, it's Ghost Haunted Mansion. Also,
Yeah,
also,
Nibiru.
oh yeah, another card that they say monster effects. There is exactly one what's the word I'm looking for? One exception, and that being infinite impermanence.
That we can think of off the top of our heads.
Yeah.
So, then you also have Veiler specifically, which is hand traps that negate the effect of a card the opponent controls and named after Effect Veiler. And you have Ash, hand traps that prevent the opponent from doing plays by disabling certain actions, usually by like negating a card or negating or destroying a card that allows them. So this is named after Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. Next, you have laddering or climbing. So this is summoning progressively stronger monsters in succession. So think about you do link climbing. You summon a monster, which summons another monster. You make a link 2. That link 2 summons another monster. You climb that into a link 3. Then maybe when one of the monsters goes to grave, they summon another, and you climb into a link 4. So this is climbing the ladder, link climbing, as it's called, things like that. Next, you have lock or bind, the act of keeping a monster useless on the field with difficulty in removing it. So think Phantom Knight's Fog Blade locks it. Think about Fiendish Chain, things like that. Lockdown is a situation where a player has extreme field control. So when I've got Caleb in lockdown, that means that I've gone full combo, full board, and he is locked down. There's nothing that he can do. Next is a loop. Loops, brother, loops. A series of action that results in the same or at least similar effects that can be used over and over again. So this would be like the red blue loop in Six Samurai, where you can just keep looping them infinitely. Or with Butterfly Dagger Elma and Gearfried the Iron Knight, you can loop You can loop Butterfly Dagger Elma infinitely because Gearfried the Iron Knight would destroy it. And when it's destroyed, it comes back to the hand. So you just loop it infinitely, and paired with something like Royal Magical Library, you can FDK your opponent or you can like basically instantly draw your entire deck. something like that. So next you have lifelink, a negative effect that applies when the card leaves the field. I
Absolute
can't.
zero.
Elemental Absolute Zero, yes. Well, I would think that it would be a negative effect that applies to the player.
No, that's fair.
Just to say, I've never actually seen this used.
It's a magic term.
Gotcha. Next, you have meta. So competitive decks in the current ban list and card pool. So when you think of meta strategies, you think of Sword Soul, you think of Tri Brigade Lyrilusk, you think of Drytron, you think of things like that that are heavily played and very prevalent decks within the meta. The meta is the overall competitive landscape of the game. Is that right to you?
Yep. Another way
Uh,
to think of the meta is the game within the game.
yeah. Next you have. Sorry, I
Mill.
gotta get a little music going. Now,
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
now that my
I'll,
Saints game has ended horribly. I gotta get a little music going.
Fair enough. I'll go ahead and continue reading on. Mill. The
Yep.
act of sending cards from the top of the deck to the player's graveyard.
Also, don't forget anti-meta.
Yes, anti-meta. It's decks that were meant to counter the meta.
Yep.
It's kind of easy. Mill, the active sending card, like I said, just said mill. Great example of a mill deck would be Lightsworm. That's their whole shtick. Mimic or copy. Having the card gain the property, usually effect or attack of another card. A great example is Trigodia. Whenever no, it isn't mimic. Oh, copycat. Classic old card. Level 1 monster on normal summon. Target one of your opponent's monsters, it gains its attack and defense. Uh, Minus. Decrease the number of cards in one's own hand or field. Uh,
So when I think of a minus, I think of making your opponent go minus, right? So think about your opponent sets 3 passes and you activate Harpy's Feather Duster. You made them go -2. So
you lost one card, the Harpy's Feather Duster. They lost three.
right. So you come out ahead in that interaction.
Let's see, mirror match. Two opposing decks that are using the same archetype, strategy, or theme. It's you're playing a deck, and then your opponent's also playing that deck.
Yes.
MST or Cyclone, Mystical Space Typhoon, or the act of using it. Subnote, Twin slash Twister slash Twee, Twin Twisters, or the
I've
act.
never heard it called Tweet Tweet.
Neither have I. I've always heard Twin or just Twister. Nerf, a card that has had its ability reduced either by ruling or card effect. Additionally, can also be referred to an OCG or TCG's card's effect being made weaker than its anime/manga version. An example of a card getting nerfed was actually Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, because originally it was a soft once per turn, which we'll talk about later. They made it a hard once per turn, which is good.
Yeah.
Net deck, the act of completely copying a deck, often those that win the YCS are placed high in competition, from online sources without any modifications. Great
So
place to
this is
start.
literally just copying a deck card for card straight, like just
Yeah,
I mean straight from the online reports.
yeah. It's got kind of a dirt. It has like a really nasty connotation to it. However, it is a great place if you're trying to learn how to deck. It's a great place to start.
I
Uh,
agree.
Nuke, the act of destroying multiple cards on the field at once, usually but not always, using a context of three or more cards are destroyed with a single effect. Black Rose Dragon, great example.
Yep.
OP/Broken, a card that is too powerful compared to other cards of its peer. Uh,
Um,
that's really relative, is the problem.
it's really objective.
Yeah. Pinned, PEND, short for Pinnacle Monsters. Pile, a stack of cards, usually the graveyard.
I wholeheartedly disagree with this definition.
It's usually used to describe a deck that's just like a bunch of random cards put together that just kind of work. It's used
Yeah, so
for
I
like
remember the Eldritch 60 card pile, as they were calling it, where it was Invoke, Dogmatica, Shadal, Eldritch, and it was like 60 cards, and it was just a pile of crazy cards that just worked together.
oh yeah. Let's see, PK Fire, decks that hybridize the Phantom Knights and the Burning Abyss archetypes. The name came from the shorthand of Phantom Knights and Fire, referencing Burning Abyss theme of Hell, with the combined name referencing the move PK Fire from the Mother franchise, became infamous for being spammed by the character Ness in Super Smash Bros.
PK Fire!
PK Fire. Anyway, play, an action involving playing a card or cards, often a combo, e.g., making a play.
Yeah,
Plus,
so making a play could be summoning a monster or activating a spell or trap. You're just making a play.
you're doing something.
Yeah.
Plus, increase the number of cards in one's own hand or field. An example of your opponent setting 3, then you activating Harpy's Feather Duster. In that situation, they minus uh,
2.
2, you plus 2. Uh,
Right.
if you plus, your opponent minuses. If you minus, your opponent pluses. Uh,
So think of if you activate Pot of Greed, you go +1.
yeah.
And
Uh,
that's why Pot of Greed is banned, is because it is an inherent +1, which is bad.
inherent, inherent free +1 with no cost or anything.
So now something like Pot of Desires is also a +1, but it has a pretty significant drawback of banishing at minimum uh, a sixth of your deck, maybe a quarter of your deck, depending on how many cards you're playing.
Yeah. Rage, force attacks and effects. That's any card that where your monsters have to declare attacks. You can't just pass with them an attack mode. You have to attack. I
These effects are very rare.
Oh yeah. Recycle or recover the active adding cards from your graveyard back to the hand or your deck. A great example of recycling is actually the entire Dolce archetype. That's their shtick. Is that they recover? Is that they recycle each other,
Recycle themselves.
recycle themselves over and over again. Reload the act of recovering cards to use them as fodder.
I've never
Uh,
seen this used.
you neither have I, so I don't have any examples. Reset the activating card returned to its initial state when it is placed on the field.
The ultimate reset card is Fiber Jar. It resets the entire game state.
Oh yeah, another great reset card is actually a wind up rabbit.
Yes, that's a
Uh,
great example.
oh yeah, revive the act of special summoning from the grave.
Easy enough.
Yeah, Monster Born or whatever. Row, series of card zone, with front row referencing the main monster zone, and back row referring to your spell and trap zone. Back row hate, cards that are mainly used to destroy or disable cards in the opponent's spell and trap card zone. Imperial Order, Roll Decree, etc. Back row
Right.
removal is the act of removing them. MST,
Harpy's Feather Duster, Lightning Storm, etc.
yeah. Rhoda, in reference to Reinforcement of the Army, a card that adds a monster from the deck to the hand. Some monsters are Rhodas on via normal summon. Stratos is another great example of
Whoa,
it.
whoa, slow down. We're getting there.
Yeah, rule sharking, the abuse of Yu-Gi-Oh rules to gain an unfair advantage. This form of unfair conduct is often used on less experienced players. Uh,
So this would be like your opponent, you. Uh,
it's one of those things where where if an experienced player can look at a duel that's going on and know that it's happening.
yeah. So, okay. Here's an example. You. I activate Twin Twister and I'm thinking on discarding its cost. And I say, I think I want to discard this kit. And I go, like, go to place it in my graveyard, but like my hand never comes off of it or anything. And I think about it for a second. I'm like, no, no, no. I want to discard this Nerval instead. And so you discard the Nerval, and your opponent's like, whoa, you already committed to discarding the kit. You
Exactly.
have to, and then like making you commit to the play, like you have to commit to the kit.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's rule sharking, right? Because one, your hand never came off the card, and two, they're like kind of like forcing you into this certain action, even though you
Yeah.
haven't like all the way committed to it. Like it's really hard to tell. And
If you're an
it can be objective sometimes or
oh, yeah.
subjective, whatever the one is where it's like relative.
Oh, yeah. Moving on, we have Run Over, destroying an opponent's monster by battle, usually used in the context where no card effects are involved.
Yep.
Pretty simple. Sacrifice, tributes, materials, or costs, and the act of using them.
Yep. Think of ritual monsters.
Yeah. Salad or salami. Salamangrate. It's the whole Salamangrate archetype.
Never heard it called salami, but okay.
Yeah. Scaling, the act of weighing booster packs to determine which pack is a rare card. That's no longer really applicable to now, because back in the day, you weren't guaranteed a foil. You weren't guaranteed a super rare or above. So the packs that had the super rares were slightly heavier than the packs that didn't.
Right.
Now you're guaranteed a super, so all the packs are about the same weight.
Yeah, it's really difficult to scale packs now, but
Uh,
people still try.
yeah. Next up, scoop, surrendering a duel. It's called that because you kind of scoop up all the cards on the table to get ready for the next game.
Yep. Next is
Uh,
search or tutor, which is the act of adding a card from your deck to your hand, except by drawing. Think of Fire Formation Tenki or Rhoda. Next, you have Shadow Strike or Shadow Dive, which is a direct attacker in effect. So think of Tri-Brigade, or I'm sorry, a Lyrilisk Assembled Nightingale. She can attack your opponent directly, or Zodiac Boarbow.
Yeah. However, I've never heard it referred to as Shadow Strike or Shadow Dive.
Me either. I just always hear it referred to as a direct attack.
Yeah.
Next is Shiny, which is cards that are reprinted in elaborate high rarity foils like gold or ghost rare. I mean, it's shiny. I don't know. If you don't know what shiny means, that's on you, not us. Next is Shut, Knock, Nope, or Strike, which is the act of negating, whether temporary or permanently. The last one being a reference to like the popular negation card Summon Strike. So like I strike the summon or something like that. Never heard it called Shut, Knock, or Nope, but I've heard it called Strike a lot. Like I strike the
Um,
summon.
it's because I actually remember Nope from back in Dino Rabbit format because people would go normal summon rabbit, activate effect, and you'd flip Solemn Judgment and just say Nope.
You know what? Actually, now that you say that, I do remember that. Smoke screening. So this is in a match, catching the opponent off guard by running a different strategy on the second or third duel. So think about it like this. If I'm running a full goat control deck in goat format, and then I side out all of my main goat control cards and side in a full chaos strategy, which is like actually somewhat viable-ish because like you can pull out all your goat control cards and all your like scapegoats and metas and go full on into like add in your BLSs, add in your chaos sorcerers, add in your thunder dragons and things like that, and smoke screen into another strategy. Or if you want, you can. Um, I know that I've seen people smoke screen. They run like an OTK game one, and then run burn game two.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You can technically you can smoke screen into in between any two strategies as long as your strategy is self-contained within 15 cards.
yeah. So next, you have Snipe, which is the act of choosing and discarding a card from the opponent's hand. This is very rare, but think
For
of,
for good reason. Smoke Grenade of the Thief.
yeah, that's a good example. I don't really think that there's a lot of these that are like necessarily. I don't think that that's necessarily entirely accurate because I've always heard of somebody like sniping the back row with like an MST or something, but that's just me.
Yeah, that's probably more. That's probably because people stopped. They didn't have very many effects where you just rip a card out of your opponent's hand and they now say rip.
Yeah.
Uh,
So the next one is Solitaire. The effect a strategy that has either little interaction with the opponent or involves the player taking extremely long turns. So think about Drytron making like a 10-minute long turn on their first turn. That's just them playing solitaire. They're playing by themselves. Next is Spawn, the act of summoning the monster, usually tokens or low level monsters. So like Scapegoat just like spawn some tokens, I guess.
Aurora,
Aurora.
Lacrosse.
Yeah, Link Cross. Next is Spin, the act of placing a card from the field on top of the deck. So think
Phoenix
of
Wind
Phoenix Wing
Blast.
Wind Blast or Rise of the
Mega
Wind
Monarch.
Monarch. Yeah. ST, S&T, or S/T. So it's just spell and trap cards. So spell traps. Next is Stack, the act of arranging one's own deck with a card effect to ensure they draw a good card, or making sure your opponent doesn't draw a good card. So stacking is cheating unless it's done by card effect. So like there are certain cards and effects like Soul Servant and the Dark Magician strategy lets you stack a card to the top of your deck. Things like that.
Oh yeah.
Next you have Stall, the act of prolonging the game with a card effect. So think about Level Limit Area B and Gravity Bind being stall cards. Next, you have Stand, the act of changing a card to face up attack position. So I've never heard this referred to like this, but I guess you could just say like anytime you flip a monster into face up battle attack position, or
Or even
if you
just tilting it.
yeah. Staple is a good card that can be used in many decks. So think of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, Effect Veiler, Infinite Impermanence, the Solemn Warning, Solemn Judgment, Solemn Strike. These are all like staple cards that can just be running anything. Next, you have starters. So these are cards that are required to initiate a deck's important combos. So, namely, when I think of starters, I think of things like Tri-Brigade Fractal, which get your entire combo line going. Next, you have Steal, the act of taking your opponent's monster or their card's property for your own. So, think of Snatch Steal.
I'd say that's like the perfect example.
Yeah. Next, you have Stratos, which is a monster that, when summoned, adds another monster from deck to the hand, named after elemental hero Stratos. Or Madolche Magellan does that. So
Yeah. Crash or ramming. The act of intentionally
yep.
attacking, knowing the attacker will be destroyed. A great example of this, actually back in Goat, is using like Mystic Tomato and crashing it or ramming it into your opponent's monster. Your Mystic
Right.
Tomato is destroyed, you take damage, and you get a free summon of like in the case of
Whatever.
Mystic Tomato, a Songen.
Right. Next, you have
So
suppress, which is prevent a card or an effect from activating in a certain timing. So I've never heard it referred to as suppressing, but something that you absolutely could do is activate Alpha Tribute Ben 10, chain DD Crow. You would be suppressing the Ben 10 effect.
bingo.
Next, you have surprise or spook, a harmful effect that is put into play at certain timing without the opponent foreseeing it. I would just call this like it's a trap, but you know,
Yeah.
I've never heard that term.
Neither have I.
Swarm or spam, the act of summoning many monsters in return, regardless of battle power. So think of B troopers swarming the field. Um, swing for game or attack for games, which is the final game-winning attack. Um, you have tag out, the act of a monster removing itself from the field and replacing itself with a different monster. So think
Perfect.
of the gladiator beasts.
A more recent example is ABC Dragon Buster tagging himself
Yeah,
out for A, B, and C.
that's perfect. Yeah. Next, you have tap or rest, which is changing a card to face up defense position. This is a magic term. Next, you have tech, a card placed in a main deck, side deck, or extra deck for the purpose of supporting a deck with cards that help it run smoother, deal with cards that would counter the deck, or to combat specific deck builds often run in the current metagame. So, a good example is in my Sword Soul deck. I am teching in one Monster Reborn. And I know that sounds crazy, but the reason you do it is because when your opponent activates Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, destroying your card, you can activate Monster Reborn, summon their Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. You get a pop on their turn, and you also get they cannot get their Destiny Hero Celestials effect off because they have to summon one of their Destiny Hero monsters from their graveyard. So
Oh yeah, no.
that's Monster Reborn would be a tech card there.
Another great example is in my Littlest Tri Brigade, in my side deck. I'm actually running Dark Smorg because I it's a tech because I can bring it out with the Smorg link, and then
Against
it
like Eldritch.
exactly gives me more back row protection and hate.
Right. So these are cards that we're just kind of teching in into our decks. Next you have tier zero. So this is a deck that can only be reliably beaten by itself. When I think of tier zero decks, I think of Goat. I think of
Teledad,
Darkron.
yeah.
Yep, Teledad. You could say that Pepe was tier zero, Spiral was tier zero, Zodiac was tier zero. I mean, Zodiac at one point had a 100% representation rate in top cut of a YCS. So that's tier zero. They're just overwhelming representation. I think if you want to put a number on it, it's like at least 65% representation qualifies as tier zero.
Something like that.
Um, Next, you have throw, which is the act of placing a card on your opponent's field in order to hinder them, like Lava Golem, Kaiju's, or Nibiru,
Or
things like that.
Contact C. Contact C
Yeah,
is a one that isn't referenced.
yeah. I've never heard throw, but I've heard getting Kaiju'd or Nibiru'd or Lava Golemed, etc. Trample or penetrate, the act of inflicting piercing battle damage. So we have a term for this in Yu-Gi-Oh now. It's called piercing, but back in the day there was no piercing term, so people would say trample because that's what Magic calls it. And then piercing became commonplace, and it's so commonplace, in fact, that they actually started just saying inflict piercing battle damage. So next you have top deck, which is the top card of the deck, or the act of placing a card on top of the deck. So for example, if you're in a top deck war, you and your opponent each have 0 cards, hand and field, and you're just top decking to try to figure out who can win the duel based off the cards off the top of the deck. So, oh wow, that's the next one is top
Yep.
decking too. Um, the next one after that is towers. So this is a reference to Apoquil Fort Towers, which is a monster that's unaffected by card effects.
But it
So
has
you
to
can
be all card effects, not
yes,
just not just it's unaffected by monster effects, unaffected by spells, unaffected by it has to be unaffected by card effects. Period.
yeah. Next, you have Toolbox, which is searching for a monster to be used in a certain specific situation. Also, when I think of a deck that is very toolboxy, I think of the old school, um, what do you call it? The old school wind up deck, when it wasn't hand looping, it was very toolboxy because it had an entire extra deck of rank threes, fours, and fives that I could kind of get into as it needed. So it was very
Um, there's
toolbox.
and then of course there's also the classic warrior toolbox
Right.
where
I also
you
think that Tri Brigade is very toolboxy because of the versatility that you have in your extra deck.
oh
I mean, the extra deck
absolutely
is solved, but like it's still toolboxy because you have so
oh yeah
many different ways to play into different. Um,
oh yeah
Next you have turtling, which is sitting behind a like defense position monster to buy time. This is I've never heard it called turtling before. I've always heard it
I
called
have
walling up, but I guess we're gonna get
yeah
there. Next is a vanilla, which is a normal or non-effect monster. So think of Sabersaurus, think of Kabuzals, think of a modern day iteration that's being
uh
used a lot is Monk of the Tenyi. Those are all
I was about to say
vanillas.
oh yeah
Next, you have a wall. This is the last one. This is a card that's difficult to destroy by battle. So think of Labyrinth Wall. It's 3,000 defense, 0 attack.
um,
It's nothing else
the
but a
old
wall.
yeah the old 2K defenders like Mystical Elf and Giant Soldier of Stone back in the day.
Right, right, right,
2K defenders you just set and also Spirit Reaper as well because it can't be destroyed by battle.
right, exactly. Marshmallow, same thing.
Exactly. All right, and that's it.
Whew.
All the ones that were like actually on the list. The three that we have that were not because we finally got to this. First one is hard ones return. That's any effect that specifically states that you can only activate the effect of insert name of card here once per turn.
Right, so Tri Brigade Fractal, you can only activate each effect of Tri Brigade Fractal once per turn. So because it specifies the name of the card, you can only use that effect of any Tri Brigade Fractal once per turn, which makes it a hard once per turn.
Yes,
So
because even if you have a second completely unrelated copy of Fractal, if you already activated that first one, you cannot activate the second one.
right,
As compared to a soft once per turn, that's an effect that states that this effect can only be used once per turn. A great example of that is actually Lyrilisk Recital Starling, because once per turn, detach one, search for level 1 Winged Beast. The
right. So
difference,
because it just says once per turn on the card, that means it's once per turn for that copy of that card.
exactly. So then, whenever I make a second Recital Starling, since it's a different copy, I can do it again.
Right. So
Also, let's say my opponent compulses my Recital Starling back to the deck, and I remake it that same one again, I can still get the effect off because it's a different iteration of Recital Starling.
right. So when I think of a soft once per turn, I think of a card like um Toy Vendor in the Fluffle deck. Very soft once per turn. It just says once per turn on the card,
Yeah.
but
Uh,
and that's just once per turn per copy.
yeah.
And every time it goes to the field or goes to the grave, it's a different copy of that card. So you can just keep using it over and over.
Another great example of that is actually Madolche Queen Tiara Masu. Her detach to target two monsters in your graveyard, send back to the deck, then shuffle two your opponent's cards back to the deck is also soft ones per turn, which is why if a Madolche is able to make multiples of them, they'll just tear your whole board of stuff that can't be targeted apart.
Right.
Because
Um, like a hard once per turn, very generally, it'll say you can only use this effect of this monster, and it'll say the monster name once per turn, or this card once per turn.
a great example of that recently is Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, who used to be a soft once per turn. But then they
Mhm.
errated him, so they changed his text to where he is a hard once per turn by just adding the text. You can only use this effect of Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon once per turn.
Right, right. And adding that hard once per turn makes all the difference in the world for some cards.
Especially something like Red MD in a deck that can just remove him from the field and then put him back on the field to get his effect off a second time back when he was a soft once per turn.
Yeah. The only other thing that we have here that we want to like kind of define is having an out. So there's something I noticed that wasn't on there. So having the out would be a good example would be your opponent has their end board is an Appaloosa, both goddess. Okay, well, in my standby phase, I activate infinite impermanence. there's nothing they can do about it. I have the out.
Yes.
You know,
I think if you want to get a more technical definition, it would be any card that prevents um your opponent's like created board from stopping you.
right. Something
Um,
else could be Dark Ruler no more. That's an out.
yeah, that's how it's an entire board. The kaiju's are also another example.
Yeah, for sure.
And then some people also say I'm trying to figure out how to out this one card. It's them looking for they don't have the out, so they're trying to find it.
Right. So,
Instead of to a whole board to a specific card.
yeah. I think that's about it. I think that's all we got.
Oh yeah. If anyone else comes up with if anyone else can think of anything else that they want that they don't know the definition of, you can either if you're in our Discord, you can just ask, and I'm 99% sure somebody will be kind enough to just explain what it is.
Yep.
Same thing on Twitter, and then of course there's always the almighty Google, which knows everything.
Yes. We do want to talk a little bit, of course, about the podcast question of the day. So today's podcast question of the day was, or last episode's question was, what is your favorite retro format? I know we did a similar one, but it's our show. We can do what we want. So my favorite decks to see on YouTube are Dragon Roller and Hat. It's a good one. A lot of fantastic ones out there, but October 2016, right after the ABC Structure, and November 2012's Abyss Rising format come to mind. Top of them all, though, is definitely December 2013 Ravine Ruler. So many cool decks were good, and the Ruler Mirror was intense. So I think Ravine Ruler is when all the Dragon Rulers had been limited, and the deck
Yeah.
was not quite as good, but there was
Yeah.
a lot more diversity in the format.
Yeah, I think the rules were limited, and I think at the time the babies were banned. I don't remember if they were banned or limited too.
Yeah. I absolutely love Edison format. Goat will always be near and dear. Hat. So Hat is hand artifact trap tricks. That's like the Nationals 2014 format. Edison slaps the September 2013 FNL list. Hat format again. Edison again. Go format or March 2013. Uh, I hear a lot of people say that they like that 2013 format, the fire water format, as a lot of people like to call it, where it was mainly like Mermail versus Fire Fist competing at the top. I've heard a lot of great things about that format.
I have fond memories of that format because that was the format I was running Fire Kings.
That was the format that we went to YCS Austin.
Yeah.
Gear Geo was also a thing during that format.
Oh yeah.
Next we have, let's see, Dragon Ruler format, Hat format, um, Edison, more Edison, more Edison. Here's an interesting one. Favorite retro format is Cold Wave Gladiator Beast format. That is interesting. I think that's an interesting one.
It really is.
So, well, that'll do it for today's episode. The new podcast question of the day is, what is your New Year's resolution? Mine is to make the podcast the best that it can be. I want to top an event. I think that would be really cool. Um, but other than those, I don't have anything else. What do you got?
That's about what I got too. Actually, maybe lose a couple of pounds.
Yep, I feel that.
Yeah. That's about all I got.
All right. Well, that'll do it for today's episode of the podcast. As always, you can find us on Twitter at Top Cut Podcast. You can find me at Dat Chumley. You can find Caleb at JamTheMan17. And of course, you can always find us in our Discord server, which the link is in the link tree down in the description below. Also, I did want to point out, it was suggested to us by both a patron and one or two other non-patrons to start an Amazon wish list for the podcast. So we went ahead and we did that. We put some stuff on there. We put some cheaper stuff on there. We put some more expensive stuff on there. This is not asking for anybody to give us free stuff, although we don't turn it down. But realistically, it was requested by listeners, so why, I mean, why not do it,
Yeah, I mean, doesn't hurt us to have it in any way.
Right. So if you are interested in, giving us a little holiday gift, you can find that also in our link tree. So uh, check out our Patreon, check out our Amazon, check out our Discord and our Twitter accounts. So thank you all so much for your support and have a good day.
Take care, everybody.